Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are going to be reviewing the latest film, Air. All right, Sarah, do you want to kick us off with an IMDb summary for Air?
Sure. Wow, I did not read this before this instant, and this is the IMDb summary. I'm very thrown off by how this starts. I'm bothered. Anyway, okay. Follows the history of shoe salesman Sonny Vaccaro and how he led Nike in its pursuit of the greatest athlete in the history of basketball, Michael Jordan.
Is that a sentence? Is there a subject?
Nope. That's why I was thrown off, because it starts with follows. We have a problem here.
You know, they could have just added a simple two-word, this movie follows.
Yeah, or even a one word. Air follows the history.
True. A whole 3 letters.
A whole 3
and
letters.
A space.
And a space. You can't forget the space. But with 4 characters, this could be a whole sentence.
Wow. This is a first. Well, we've had some IMDb summaries that are not full sentences.
Yes.
But this one is very awkwardly sounding.
Wow. I'm quite thrown off, so I'm going to close the IMDb app on my phone.
Goodbye,
so that I
IMDb.
Don't keep staring at it.
For your services today.
Yes, thank you, IMDb. You're doing great.
We're giving you 2 stars today, 2 stars out of 5. We'll leave some comments for you. Good thing we'll be back next week with another movie.
Right? I'm sure that summary will be better.
Yeah.
One can only hope.
Good stuff. We're off to a good start.
We are off to a good start. My goodness.
All right, let's start off with our one-sentence summaries that are actually sentences. Actually, let's see if mine is. Mine might not be a sentence.
That's all right. You know what?
I can make it a full sentence with 2 words, and I'm going to do that now because we just roasted IMDb for this, and I cannot follow it up with a phrase that is not a sentence. Okay, we're good now. You always have fully formed sentences. So, Sarah, please share yours.
I don't know that I always do. Anyway, mine is always bet on Michael Jordan.
Oh, yes. Yes. It is a command, a manifesto.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like there should be a few caveats in this one, but, you know, this movie says always bet on Michael Jordan, and that's great.
Yeah. That is its thesis.
Yes, it sure is.
My one-sentence summary is, this is yet another story of an individual genius lathered up in Hollywood gloss. All right. So.
I see. I was trying to determine which 2 words you added. Mm-hmm. Got it. Well done.
Yes, at the beginning.
Yeah.
It was originally just yet another story. Blah, 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 blah. But a whole this is 6 characters in 2 spaces, and we've made it. I can now justifiably still roast the IMDb summary.
At least your original one didn't start with follows.
Now I want to figure out how to make that for next week's one-sentence summary.
Ooh. Oh, that'll be a fun little challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Okay. That is our new challenge, is our one-sentence incomplete summaries for the movie.
Yes, our fragment of a thought.
Yes. The more awkward, the better.
Ooh, okay. I'm always going to lose at that.
Challenge,
I'm not going to lie. Challenge forfeited by me.
Okay, let's start off with our initial thoughts about Air, and we won't include any spoilers in this first section. We'll give a spoiler, and then we'll dive in fully in the second half of this. All right, so Sarah, tell me your thoughts about Air. How did this work for you?
So I've gone on a bit of a journey with Air.
I love hearing about these journeys you go on. Please recount your adventures.
I feel like I'm going on more and more journeys lately.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed this movie in the theater. Uh, had a great time, had some laughs. Uh, I enjoy basketball, so I felt like I was like in, and I like knew all like the players that they were talking about and some of the like shop talk stuff. Like I understood, so like I felt like I was in on the joke. Um, I loved that the soundtrack like transported me into this world. Um, I am a Michael Jordan fan, so I was like, okay,
Mm.
it's cool. So like I had a good time in the theater. Uh, did not think it was a great movie in the theater, but it was enjoyable enough.
Mm.
But the more that I have thought about this movie, the less that I have liked it outside of the theater. There's some technical things to talk about, some character issues, and I think at the end of the day, like one of my core issues with this film is I wanted it to be a different film. Uh, because I think the
Oh.
the most interesting aspect of this story is not the main point of this story, and that is bothersome to me. So I yeah, the more that I've thought about it, the less I have enjoyed it outside of the theater.
It's kind of fascinating to me every time that happens because there's something that gives you that, like, that high in the theater where you're like, "This
Mhm.
is fun," and then you
Yeah.
think about it a couple days later and you're like, "Ah, wow." Like, you
Yeah.
come off the high and you're like, "Hmm," you can see it a little bit more clearly. That happened to me with The Fabelmans, and it's just such an interesting journey of, like, why did that work so well in the moment, though, you know? And I'm intrigued to unpack that a little bit more, and I just have so many I'm eager to get to the spoiler, open section because like, I want to know what the most interesting part of the story was to you and how you might want to workshop this. So this might be a workshop episode, which is always fun for us.
Mhm. Yeah, those are some of my
Hmm.
favorites.
Yeah. Um, I did not enjoy this. It was a fine experience. I'm intrigued that there's a lot of great reviews for this, and
Yeah.
the public seems to really love this movie, and I think part of that probably is because of the Michael Jordan-ness of it all, and just getting to see the story unfold with a beloved public figure. I think immediately kind of draws a crowd and stirs up those warm fuzzy feelings. I'm not a basketball fan. I don't really follow basketball, so that might be part of this too. But this is just like a pretty mediocre Hollywood movie to me, and this movie's not interested in digging into anything particularly interesting. It's pretty just like an unfolding of the events, the focus on this main character, which I think we've seen like a ton of times in American cinema, who's just like this incredibly talented individual that has a vision for something and is bullish about making that happen. I'm like, man, this is just such an American story. And even the way that the movie handles the ending and kind of the denouement and right before the ending credits just feels so American. So I've been thinking in the past couple days since watching this more about like this type of story arc and this type of story and why we kind of love telling this story again and again, not just in the movies but just like the people, public figures that we uphold and love to celebrate, like the so many of like the tech giants and the founders who just like had this vision and was like breaking the molds of conventional ideas. Like we love that type of story, and I've been thinking a lot about like how much that's just part of our American ethos. So, like overall as a movie, it's all right. I think that there's things that I wanted to dive into more with different parts of the story that we didn't really get. I was actually thinking about I want to see more of like the documentary version of this. Like, let's go
Mhm.
into the details of these contracts and how the world works and why this was so groundbreaking. Like, I was more interested in that. This feels so glossy.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it felt like a straight to streaming movie to me
Yeah.
than a theatrical release.
Yep.
That was one of the main things that I kept thinking about, and I had to, like, actively stop myself from, like, turning on, like, getting into my phone and, like, scrolling, because it felt like
Mm.
that type of a movie where you can just have one eye on the movie and then one eye doing something else.
Mhm.
I was like, "No, you do not do this. You are in a theater. Act like a civilized human being. What is wrong with you?"
Oh,
But it was
yeah.
like, oh yeah, there wasn't enough, at least for me, like stakes, emotional connection, character stuff, with the exception of Michael Jordan's mom. She was the
Mhm.
only character that I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I care about you. Um, but everybody else, I was just like,
There's so
I, I don't care.
Yeah, because they're just thin characters, and
Yeah.
even the way they're played by these actors are just very thin, like, caricatures of those personality types, and, man, I don't know, this it just felt thin, and we're just kinda going through the motions of telling the
Mhm.
story, which is kind
And
of a
there are
shame.
so many good actors in this too.
Right?
Like, I was
Right?
surprised at how just bland some of the performances were.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like Chris Tucker brought a lot of vibrancy to his character,
Mhm.
and then obviously Viola Davis is
A
electric
gem.
and dynamic and just owns the screen. So she is phenomenal. But, like, the all the main dudes that we were following, I was just like,
Ah,
I I don't care about you.
mhm. Mhm. And I think the problem is because they don't feel like fully realized characters.
Yes.
There's these defining traits about them, and that's all we get. We don't go any deeper beyond that. We don't get into the nuances. It's just here's a character that's passionate and bullish and rebellious, and here's a character that's kind of a paper leader, but then ultimately like bets on the right choice and has some quirks along the way, and like that's about it. Like there isn't much more to it. Yeah.
And then there was that, like, one moment where we learn more about Jason Bateman's character,
Mhm.
and the whole time, I was just watching this and I'm going, "I don't care about this. What does this have to do with anything?" And then, like, none of the things that was said in that section, like, nothing came of it. It didn't influence anything.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I didn't understand. It felt like there was supposed to be maybe more movie, and, like, there was, like, character stuff in those bits, but it was cut. I don't know. There were some things where it felt like the movie was teeing something up, and then it just did nothing with it. It was
Mhm.
quite frustrating.
Yep. Yep. We're going through the motions. Yeah. It let's include the spoiler alert so that we can dive in fully. So if you haven't seen Air, we recommend at least checking it out before continuing to listen to the episode. Clearly, a lot of people are really liking this movie, so go see it for yourself. It's available on theaters, and we are entering into our spoiler open territory. Okay, Sarah, tell me a little bit more about and unpack like which part of this story was the most interesting to you that you wished that this would have dove more fully into. Because I'm curious.
Yeah, the part that I think is the most impactful is, what Michael Jordan's mom did, not
Yeah,
just for him, but in changing the way that
the business model.
athletes make money.
Hmm.
Like, what she did in negotiating that deal changed everything. And I wish that this movie was her story, because obviously Viola Davis, phenomenal actress. She can do literally anything. And she, to me, was the most interesting character. And she was the one that I wanted to see more of. And so I wish that this had been about her journey, her negotiations, and then being able to maybe see some of the, like, ripple effects of that, to truly understand how this mother advocating on behalf of her son changed everything. Like, to me, that is the interesting bit of this story.
I had the exact same thought when that phone call scene unfolded. And what's interesting is that the way that the story ends is focused on the impact and the legacy of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the real story arc, if that's the ending, then is the vision that Michael Jordan's mother had to change the dynamics, change the script, change the business models. That actually really wasn't Sonny's idea. But for most of the film up until that point, we're following Sonny and his story and the fact that he saw the potential in Michael Jordan and bet big on it. So it's interesting to me that the way what the ending of this story arc is resolving and highlighting is actually different from what we see starting in the first half. And so there's like a little bit of a mismatch there, and so much of the like ending denouement piece where they're showing all the like impact and the results and the effects with the white text on screen, like all of that is highlighting and emphasizing the amount of benefit and representation that players now have, right? And like that pivotal moment happens with Viola Davis, and the fact that Sunny is like was like, oh, he also is like, oh yeah, that's just not how the world works, and she's like has the vision to be like, then we will change it. And so it really, in a lot of ways, the turning point or the real shift in the story is that moment where she is willing to stick with her convictions.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is definitely the most compelling part of this whole thing. Um yeah, I and like there are some interesting things about the way that Jordan's changed the NBA and the NBA rules, and some of that is very interesting, but it's far less compelling than this mother advocating for her son and changing the rules. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that is a story worthy of a movie,
Mm-hmm.
not these dudes trying to make money off of a shoe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. And it ended
Yeah.
on this weird like hopeful like they changed the world. And like they did, but I don't know. It was like a weirdly like hopeful ending when I'm watching this and I'm going like Nike is a like billion-dollar corporation. It's a little weird to me to be like positioning them as these little guys that
Yeah.
like changed history, and they did in some ways, but I don't know. I'm still struggling to like square that piece of it too. I
Mm.
It would have been much easier for me to just like be rooting for Dolores who changed everything. Like
Mm.
that is very clear cut to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what was interesting to me about the last like 5 minutes of this movie, where they're sharing about the like how much money the shoe made and all this stuff, and I was like, the the success and impact that we're highlighting is these dollar numbers. There were so many numbers on screen of like how much this person made and how much this person made and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, man, this seems like such a money focused metric for what the impact is. And the real impact is actually that these players now are able to be fully rewarded and credited and represented for the work and effort that they're doing on the courts. And as a byproduct of that, yes, they're making a lot of money, but it's like less about the shoe and more about the representation that these players now have. And so, but like our version of this story here in America is that the success are these dollar values on the screen. Just felt a little
Yeah.
bit empty.
Yeah, and so like one of the ending pieces that I thought was so interesting is Phil's line was Phil has donated over $2 billion to charity.
Yeah.
And I was like, this makes me want to research this dude and see like who he really is. Like, I don't know, like it felt like such a glossy way to paint the CEO. And $2 billion charity, that's great. Like, yes, please give all the money to charity. But it just seemed like such a weird thing to include because all we know about Phil is that he's obsessed with his grape car.
Yeah.
And he likes to be barefoot in the office. And he eventually made the gutsy decision to back Sonny.
Yeah.
So it's just this weird, like, fact that had nothing to do with anything that happened in the movie. It was very strange to me.
Well, and to build on your point there, like Phil and Sonny's motivations were never about like we want to advocate for players are being properly
Yeah.
rewarded. You know,
Yeah.
if that was their motivation, great. This is a fantastic story to tell, and they partnered up with Dolores and all this kind of stuff. No, their motivation is to like keep making the company more money so that their department doesn't get cut and that they can help the company be successful. There is this like little emotional storyline that they include there with like um, Jason Bateman's character and the impact on the families and all this kind of stuff. But it's really not at the focal point. I never got the sense that that was really their motivation. Is it's
Mm-hmm.
primarily like we're running a business and we need to figure out how to keep making the company more money, and this is how we're going to do it by entering into this contract with Michael Jordan.
Yeah. And capitalism, it's great. It works, sure. But it's so weird to me to be like trying to root for the quote unquote little guy that is $1 billion company. It was just, it was very strange. I'm still not quite sure how to like square that, and it's this romanticizing of capitalism that was weird to me. The more that I've thought about it, the more that I'm like, I don't I don't know that I love this.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, what also I felt a lot while watching this movie is Sonny, Matt Damon's character. I'm curious how he's interpreted to other people. I think he's supposed to be our protagonist that we're rooting for, and he kind of like, stirs up the system and is a rebel in that way. But he's kind of obnoxious for most of this movie. Yes, he has the tenacity and the conviction with his ideas and his belief. And he's only the success story because it turned out to be a success. Had he had some kind of like, you know, okay ideas, just his methods are just like so bullish and like kind of aggressive about how he's going about them and all this kind of stuff. I found a little bit off putting, but it's a story we love to tell about these visionary leaders who are have no regards for the way the systems work and the hierarchies and all this kind of stuff, the established systems that are just like advocating for something that they believe in, right? Like we see this with Steve Jobs, we see this with Mark Zuckerberg. We love to tell the story of like the person that comes in with visions and ideas and innovation that kind of shakes and ignites this new direction. We love that story, but like boots on the ground, he's kind of obnoxious for most of this movie and has like no real like regards or collaboration with anybody else. That their butts are on the line too. Like, and I love that scene where Jason Bateman's character is like, "Do you I get that you're a genius in a lot of ways and you have these ideas, man, but there are stakes here that you're putting on the line and making decisions without any of us really being along for that journey." And I was like, yeah, that's true. Like, good. Someone needs to call him out on it. And I don't, they just, if there was a like interesting wrestling that he faces with this sense of responsibility, but also his conviction about his ideas, I think this would be more interesting. But he just kind of goes for it and doesn't really care about anyone else.
Yeah, he is a pretty unlikable character. At least I did not enjoy him.
Mm-hmm.
Um and I think that was that was a struggle for me too. Like I'm like, okay, you're my protagonist, so I know I'm supposed to be rooting for you, but you're being such a jerk to
Yeah.
everybody around you.
Yeah.
Like you should be fired.
Mhm. Mhm.
um but I think another issue that I had is I didn't feel the stakes. And so
Yeah.
they kept telling us the stakes, which now that I'm thinking back to it, a lot of them were numbers were the
Mm.
stakes.
Mhm.
And so I was just constantly being told, our jobs are at risk or whatever, but you don't actually feel the weight of that.
Mhm.
And even though there are some like down moments, like there's not really a moment where Sonny has to wrestle with anything, like you said. Like he's like, this is what I'm doing, and it's gonna work out great. And this is
Mhm.
what they did, and it worked out great. Even in the waiting, even in that moment when they thought, because Adidas matched their offer, that they thought they were going to lose it, like that was so quick, and it
Mhm.
you don't really get to sit in the weight of the emotions. Sunny doesn't experience really that dark night of the soul, and then it's just like, oh, we got it.
Mhm.
It felt so shallow. It felt unearned to me, and it felt so low stakes
Yep.
that I don't know. And I understand that it could be hard to write a movie like this because a lot of us know that Jordans are a thing. Like we know, we've heard of that. So you know that Michael Jordan signs with Nike. So it's probably harder to write in those stakes when we know what happened in real life, but it didn't even feel like there was an attempt to clearly show the stakes and get the audience emotionally invested in it. So then they just told us over and over again instead.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I had that same thought when the movie was unfolding where I was like, all of these stories that are like retellings of, true events are inherently more challenging to write because, like you mentioned, we kind of know the ending already, which is why, if anything, the film should have leaned in more heavily on the emotions and the complexities and the nuances of getting to the final destination. Okay, if we know where the destination is, that's fine. Then let's make the journey really
Yeah.
interesting and really
Yeah.
complex and take us on the roller coasters of ups and downs of getting to the destination that we already know we're going to get to. Because that's not going to be the thing that's propelling us forward now. It's going to be the characters and the people along the way that are part of this journey to get to the destination we already know we arrive at. It's almost like you're saying, if anything, we should have leaned in more heavily to that instead of just kind of letting it unfold. And it's the film's almost matter of fact in how it tells this. Like it almost seems entirely uninterested in giving us the roller coaster ride. We're just this happens and then this happens and then
Yeah.
this happens and then this happens. Um,
Yeah. It's so like
it's odd.
linear. Like you're just kind
Yeah.
of like plodding from event to event,
Yep.
watching Sonny be a jerk, and then the movie's over.
Yep.
Like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, this was not a roller coaster ride, which
Oh.
is sad. It could have been a really fun roller coaster ride.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Like that scene where I think his name's Pete, the guy who creates the shoe,
Oh
and
yes,
needs to do it in what, like 24 or 48 hours?
yeah.
Like, give us a scene, like some montage of like, oh my gosh, will he get it done in time? He's pacing around his workshop. He's like struggling to think of the ideas, and it finally hits, and then he's gotta like do it really quickly in order to make this meeting. Like, let's build that up too, because that could have been a moment of tension. They've got this huge meeting and they need a prototype ready within this
Hmm.
short time period. Can they do it? Can they not do it? What is that like? That mad rush? And we never really see that. It's just he gets the task, a scene or two later, the shoe shows up like magically. Um,
Yeah, and it
yeah.
it seemed like that's where they wanted to go because that conversation that they have is like, you need to not just create a shoe, but you need to create something that's never existed before.
Yeah.
And so it seemed like that's where we were gearing up to, but then instead of getting what you just described, we get Jason Bateman's character's birthday and talking about his custody and Born in the USA song.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, why are we spending this time with this character that is not our main character, is doing little to influence the plot instead of
Mhm.
actually focusing on the people who are doing the work of creating this shoe that
Mhm.
everything rests on to sign Michael Jordan. Like, it's like they didn't understand how to create stakes in this movie, so then they just didn't.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. You know where I thought this movie was going for a moment is because we get that scene where Jason Bateman's character shares about the stakes for his family. And then I'm like, okay, maybe that becomes this catalyst or the stakes emotionally for this unfolding. Because there's that short shot where Sonny walks out of the office and sees like all of these people working in this department that we're
Mhm.
supposed to assume that if this deal doesn't go through, they cut the department, all these people lose their jobs, and you kind of feel the weight of that. And so I was thinking what this movie was going to do is Adidas matches the offer. Dark Knight of the Soul, like we probably aren't going to make it. Like this is not going to happen. We're going to get cut. But then it's the feeling of responsibility and community with these people that then is the catalyst for Sonny to have his stroke of genius idea that then seals the deal. That's where I thought this was going. Like we've come to the end of ourselves as far as the motivation for just being like, let's just make the company some more money. But the thing that will get us through the toughest times, where we get our most creative ideas, will be when it's no longer for us, it's for the people around us. Like that, I was like, this could be interesting. No, we don't get that at all. He just gets a phone call. He waits a little patiently, a little longer, and he gets the phone call that they get the deal. So there isn't even a moment where that emotional stakes could have spurred the plot on even further. Like when we thought this was over, no, it's that like that emotional stakes that is going to push him to create his next best idea. That is the thing that's going to steal the deal. We didn't really get that. He just waits a little bit longer, more patiently by the phone.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, some weird choices were made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the root problem with the fact that there aren't stakes is that for Sonny, there is no clear motivations for him. That's the problem.
Correct. Other than being right.
Yeah. Which just I don't know, feels kind of like part of this is for his ego is how I felt. You know, like he
Mhm.
knows he's an idea man. He knows that he comes up with great things. And part of this is just being like he wants to see this come to fruition and he's bet everything on it. Great.
Yeah. And
You
it
were
almost
right.
it felt like they were like trying to set up some stuff with him, like one of the first things that we see is him betting on basketball and winning and then losing it all. And so like seeing his gambling, taking on big risks, all of that. Phil even mentions the gambling and how it's a problem. So like I wish that they would have leaned a little bit more heavily into that and really developed that flaw. And so even making this even making us as the audience question, like, are you just trying to do this because you're just gambling in real life with people's
Mm.
lives? Like, I feel like there could have been something really interesting there with that. But again, like they start with this little seed of an idea, but they never actually allow it to grow.
Mm. So, proposal. Uncut Gems meets Air,
Yeah.
except it's a fairy tale ending instead of a tragedy. You know?
Yeah.
Like here's a man who actually has really great ideas. Well, to build on that, one thing that I wished we saw in this as well is part of what gives Sonny the vision to know and see the potential in Michael Jordan is the fact that he loves the sport so much, you
Yes.
know? And I wish we'd seen more of that. There's just a couple scenes, a couple shots of him watching basketball late at night and he gets this like stroke of inspiration. But so many of these films that share the rise of the individual genius, like there's probably hours and hours of studying and out of his love for basketball that fed his genius, that fed his ability to have the vision to see that. Let's see that. That's interesting too, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that would be fascinating as well. And that would help us understand this character more.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Like he's got, like, the instincts to take big risks, but it's also backed up by his meticulous study of the sport for him to know, because he bet right in this situation. He
Mhm.
could have bet wrong, and it absolutely falters, and the entire apartment gets cut. That's I mean, for most people, that's the story. Like, he's the 5% or the 0.1%, whatever, that really knows the sport well enough to have identified the right person to bet on to, right? That's why we, put it on the big screen, because it's so exciting. But there's work that went behind that, and I wish this movie showcased that a little bit more, because the misinterpretation of this message is that, like, as long as you have an idea and you're willing to go for it, like, go for it. And that's accompanied by the work and study and hours of time that went into you having that tuned, that discernment to know this is the person to bet on, right? There's preparation that went into that.
No, Jen, that's not the American way. We just decide something, and then because we decided it, we have declared that it is right.
Yes.
That
This
is
is
the
my
American
same
way.
Let me get on my same soapbox that I had
Ooh,
with Rey, which is
yes.
that she can just pick up a lightsaber and wield it as the same way that someone who studied it for years and years and years and is the master on it. Like, no, come on, people. Mm.
Mhm. Yep. But I do agree that that insight into Sonny and his hard work and dedication and diligence and all of those things, that would have made him more endearing as a character as well.
Mm. Yeah.
Because yes, he can be abrasive. Yes, he doesn't always communicate the best. Yes, he's hard-headed, but he's not just a gambler seeking that next high. He
Mhm.
is, yeah, taking a big risk, but he's done the research. And so we
Yeah.
can be confident in this. Like, I feel like that brings some more positive characteristics to him. Uh, and so more time spent with him doing that hard work probably would have helped me at least connect with the character a little bit
Mm.
more.
Mhm. Yeah. And then there's more of those emotional stakes we woven into this, because the win
Mhm.
at the end is for someone who is a lover of the sport and recognize someone else who was great at the sport. And there was this pairing that came together that really enabled this groundbreaking, reform that happened. It's these two people that were really invested in the sport and could see beyond what most people could see. That's exciting. Like, I want to root for that. Not this dude who's just like trying to make his company some more money and be right. It's hard to get behind that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's much harder to connect to.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's cool that you were right, but that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, in some ways, the movie is faithful to the story it's telling and its brand, because the whole denouement sequence is just, this is how much money they made, this is how much money they gave away to charity, this is how much money, 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 like, it's it's in line with the story it told. It's just,
Yeah. Yeah, I think if money is not your greatest goal, then those metrics don't mean as much.
yep, yep,
Like like we've already talked about, like I was much more interested in how Dolores changed how sponsorships work for athletes.
yeah,
I was also interested in, they included the little bit at the end that about college athletes and how that those rules have changed as well. And I'm like, okay, to me that is interesting. Those are
yep.
the things that I want to know about, rather than how Nike blew up and now is worth multi billions of dollars. Like that is
Yes.
not as exciting to me. And that, I am not everyone. I get it. Some people, that's great. And they would probably enjoy this. But for me, it just felt hollow because money was really the only metric that mattered. And that's not my most important metric.
Mm. And what's interesting is that, like, some of those metrics, some of those statements in white text on the screen could have been included but framed differently, you know, to really
Mm-hmm.
emphasize, like, what that means. It's like, you gave us the fact, but, like, ultimately, like, why does that matter? Why is that important? For example, there's one of the lines on there is how much money Michael Jordan's making from the Air Jordans and the percentage that he has now, and it's just on screen, it's just like a dollar value, like Michael Jordan is now collecting this much money, blah blah blah. But what really I think the movie want, or I hope the movie would want to say is Michael Jordan was the first person that was represented and rewarded for the effort he put in, and it happens to be this amount. But like, I think how they just like pushed that sentence a little bit further too, to be like, why does this matter, and what has it opened up for all of the other players in his industry? Like, that's what matters more. He was the first to make X amount of dollars that set the precedent for everything else. It just one step further. Like, the framing of those could have even made it even if we're going to include the dollar amounts, fine. But frame it differently, you know, instead of being like the focus and emphasis being on the dollar amount, the emphasis is the dollar amount and then why that matters.
Yeah, yeah, that would have been helpful. You
Yeah.
know, add the meaning in there.
Yeah.
Why should we care? Like,
Right.
obviously, Michael Jordan, he's great. I want him to make all the money. That's totally fine. But that extra bit of meaning, that added context, would have been nice. But
Yeah.
the movie didn't seem to super care about that. It was just kind
Mhm.
of, it felt like an afterthought to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, really, that should be the story.
Yeah.
Oh well, what can you do?
But it's interesting to me that this movie's getting so much attention and so
Yeah.
much appeal. I'm surprised. Honestly, when the movie ended, I was like, huh, why? This is fascinating. This is a fascinating pairing, which this movie that seems to be so focused on capitalism and a win for capitalism and all this kind of stuff. And so that's why my theory was here's a beloved figure that the masses love. And that's maybe why there's just so much love for this movie. Because in and of itself, it's just like an okay movie, and the messaging's
Yeah.
kind of funky. So
Yeah.
what is it about this movie that people love?
Yeah, I know that I had a fun time during the movie because I
Mm,
feel like I was in that world. And like, so like when they're talking about like basketball players, and they had that board on the draft, and they're talking about each player on the list, and I'm like, oh, I know these names, I know what happened with some of these players. So like, I knew the context, I was in the world. And then the fact that it was set in the 80s, and there's just like a weird nostalgia
mm,
for me about the 80s, even though I wasn't alive during the 80s. That was so fun to just be in that world for a bit. And I wonder, people who grew up watching Michael Jordan, like you said, or people who enjoy basketball, how many of them really enjoyed it just because there's so much talk about basketball. And
mm, mhm.
I don't know, I know that definitely contributed to my enjoyment because I felt like I was in on it. I knew what was happening. I understood the conversations, and that made it more enjoyable for me.
Mm. Maybe that's what it is. I mean, that's the same secret sauce that is making the MCU a ton of money as well. You know, it's like every new
Hmm.
movie you watch, you're like, we're back in this world. These same people, I know them. I've heard of them. This
Yeah,
character and that character.
and
Like, there's something about that that feels comforting.
yeah, and that's how I felt too. It was very fascinating because while I was watching, I felt myself doing that, and I was like, oh, this is fascinating. Even though while I was watching, I was also going, man, this should have gone straight to streaming so I could be watching this on my couch for free.
Yeah,
Even though
yeah.
I was having a good time and in on the joke. So it was this weird like back and forth thing that I was
That
doing.
might be why then. Yeah. I mean, in my theater, people clapped at the end.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I was shocked.
Oh my
When
gosh,
all
me
those, like,
too.
one-liners of the how much money they're making and the impact and all that stuff, people were clapping.
Wow.
I know. I was like, "I must be missing something."
There were no claps in my theater, if that helps at all.
Okay,
It was just a
good.
silent walking out of the theater.
Hmm. But I think you're right that there's something about seeing this beloved figure and then being in this world that is exciting. You just want to be you just want to be here and hang out with these people in this world of sports that you love. I could see how that's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the nostalgia piece too. Like,
Mm,
I feel like that, man, nostalgia just gets you. What the
yeah,
heck?
yeah.
It's amazing how that can be used to like suck you in. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm
Mhm.
having a great time. And then you think critically about it later and you go, maybe I didn't enjoy that as much as I thought.
Yeah, but then in the moment you're like, "Ah, yes.
Oh, yeah, it's a
We're
blast.
on the journey." Yeah. Hmm. I mean, that's probably how people are feeling about Super Mario Brothers movie that is making so much money right now. I've seen so many people talk about it and review that movie and being like, just it's so fun to see these characters and their quirks on screen. That is compelling, apparently, because that movie is making a ton of money in the box office right now.
Yeah, I'm very shocked at how well that movie is doing. I am shocked.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. But okay. Other things that we wanted to mention?
I have a quick basketball aside
Okay.
that will
Will I
probably
understand it?
mean
Will I get the
nothing
reference?
to you,
Okay.
but
I will be here to receive
it's
and absorb your excitement.
I'm gonna be real quick. The film at the end, like calls Michael Jordan the greatest basketball player of all time,
Yes.
and I was
Well,
shocked.
not only that, I think it says he's also potentially the greatest athlete of all time,
Yeah,
which I was like, "Oh, wow. Okay." This movie
and
loves Michael Jordan.
yeah, I
Your
found that
thoughts?
so fascinating because so
Mhm.
I am in the Michael Jordan camp. Like
Mhm.
I get that. But the GOAT of basketball is very much up for debate. And like that is
Oh,
it is a debate, let me tell you.
wow.
And so it was just amazing to me that the movie was so like, nope, it's Michael Jordan. Definitively done. We've said it. It is what it is. I was like,
Mm.
wow, we're not even gonna like hedge our bets. It's nope, he's the greatest of all time. Okay, cool. I was just so surprised.
Which they didn't need to include any of that. Like, let's be non-controversial, just not make that claim, maybe, you know?
And it would have been so easy to just be like, he is one of the greats of all time. Like
Yes,
that would have been
exactly.
so easy. And it is 1,000% accurate because he was a phenomenal basketball player. He broke so many records. He did so much for the sport. Like, yes. But
Yeah.
wow, to definitively say that he is the GOAT, woo, was
I'm
bold.
just am surprised that they went so far to say that one of the greatest athletes.
Yeah.
Was like, okay, that's a bold statement, y'all.
Yeah,
We're
there's a
really gonna
lot
make
of
that?
there's a lot of athletes in the world.
This is the equivalent to Damien Chazelle at the end of Babylon putting a montage of films from the past, like all of film history. Like, how are you choosing these, sir?
Oh, I had
And why
forgotten
are we
about
making
that.
these claims that people can come for you for? Don't put it out there, you know? Just
Yeah.
unless you're really ready to back it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was surprised by that one for sure.
Yeah.
Especially as it's like a basketball movie and I get it. Like it's focused on Michael Jordan. Like I understand. But I mean, basketball people are going to watch this and
Mhm.
I don't know, fight about it on the internet, which maybe that's what you want because the more
Honestly,
people are
yes,
talking about your
actually.
movie,
Yeah.
but I
Like,
don't
the
know.
Twitter debate of this is good press.
Oh,
A press,
absolutely,
good
because people are
press.
talking about
Yeah. So, I hope that's their thinking because that I respect it more.
it.
You know? Like,
Yeah.
they're in the, like, in the production room, like, "You know what we should do? Let's start the Twitter debate. Put it in there. Put it in there. Make the claim." Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not hard to start Twitter debates, so that's what they were going for. Good job.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, I wanna give a shout out. Viola Davis is amazing in everything that she does. But I just got such a little taste of how much she's just an incredible, incredible actress. In the scene with the phone call, it's probably one of the best scenes in this movie in
Yes.
general.
Yes.
But she does this in so many of her roles. There's just like a quiet confidence and a power and authority that she speaks with in certain roles that she's choosing and is given that is so captivating and electric. And to see Sunny just like crumble under the weight of her words of being like, this might have been a little typo that you forgot to include, and just the unassuming way she can and press on this thing that she cares about without being the way that Sunny goes about things, like bullish and aggressive and whatnot, but still command the same authority and conviction and confidence is just incredible to see and just to be in the presence of. And she brings this to so many of her other iconic roles, but it was thrilling to just be in the presence of that for just one scene in this movie.
Oh, she is the best part of this movie
Yeah.
by far. Like, I don't know, I feel like for for the movie up until we see her, it just kind of feels like this like bland guys are doing their business stuff. And then Viola Davis comes in, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, now I'm in a movie. This is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I want to see more of you because she is such an incredible actress, and she brought so much to that role. And like you said, like she has authority and strength, and she is
Mm-hmm.
also so tactful and kind, but she has boundaries and she will let you know what they are. And she has this unwavering love for her son, and she's going to fight for him. And it's just all of this
Mm-hmm.
bottled up in her, and her performance is so good. Ugh, that is
Mm-hmm.
why I want the Dolores Jordan movie starring Viola Davis, and it's all about all of her as opposed to what we got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
It's
well.
a compelling, yeah. The vision that she has and
Yeah.
a lot of the same spirit that the movie celebrates in Sunny, she has. And arguably the way the system changes is the conviction that she has to shake it up and demand for it and advocate for it. Yeah.
And she is endearing and likable and personable, and she can connect with people, and she's not a
Mhm.
jerk. Like
Yep.
there's she is a much more likable character than Sunny. So I know the movie is not about Dolores. The movie was never going to be about Dolores, but I wish that it was.
Yes. Yes.
But
I wanted a different
that's
movie,
that's
but
fine.
that's okay.
Yeah, it would be
No.
a way different movie.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we get the uncut gems version of Sunny's story, and then we get the Dolores story.
We
I
get
will
like the Woman
It'll be
King
good.
meets Air.
Yes, that is what we want.
Like here she is riding into battle to fight the corporate greed and powers
Oh
that
my
be.
gosh, yes. She shows up at Nike's offices with her spear, decked out in her armor, ready to go. She comes like running in. She's jumping over cubicles. She's like
Yes.
kicking people in the face. It'd be great. I am here for this crossover movie.
Oh yeah.
It would be incredible.
That would be fabulous.
Air 2, Attack of the Woman King.
Yes. And when they land the deal, they can do that whole dance sequence that's so beautiful from the Woman King,
Yes.
but it's in the Nike offices,
Oh,
surrounded by neon lights
ooh, yes. Okay,
and
that
the
would be
shoe.
fun.
And they're doing it they're wearing the shoe.
This is brilliant. And I mean, now they make Nikes in so many colors, so it can be
Yes.
so colorful as well.
Match the outfits. Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Good
this is
stuff.
great. I love this.
I like this multiverse that we're
this is
creating.
this is our multiverse.
Yes.
Just Viola Davis movies.
All right. Any other last thoughts before we wrap up? We hit it all?
Probably my last thought is I am grateful that the NBA has changed their rules about shoes, which took way longer than it should have.
Oh, interesting.
But oh yeah, now if you watch an NBA game, you see all sorts of colors on people's feet. It's great. But that didn't happen until I think like the 2018-2019 season. But yeah, now you see all kinds of colorful shoes. It's so fun. And it's just a cool way for like players to also express themselves while on the court. It's great. So I'm happy that we finally got there. It's lovely.
Yeah. And it can fuel all the sneakerheads.
Oh, heck yeah.
Walls of art.
It is pretty amazing.
It's incredible. Yeah. All right. Well, this is our review and discussion of Air. You can find it available out in theaters. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Movies and Us. Our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. So everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad that you hung out with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a review letting us know your thoughts about Air. You can connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at moviesandUsPod, or you can email us at moviesandUsPod@gmail.com. We will be back next week to discuss the much anticipated for Sarah and I film, Cocaine Bear. We're finally going to do it, Sarah.
Oh, yes. I'm so excited.
Most anticipated movie of 2023 for us to watch.
I mean,
the gem that is Cocaine Bear. We haven't seen it yet. We don't know if it's good. It's going to be great, though.
Right? It's going to be a fun time. You got a bear who does cocaine, and it's based on a true story. This is incredible. This is the
entertainment we need here in American cinema.
Honestly, in the year of our Lord, 2023, what did we need? Cocaine Bear. That is absolutely what we needed.
Yes. I'm excited for us to talk about this movie. It's going to be good. All right. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you very soon.